to everybody who won the award, and again for all the applications. So it's great to see such great practice going on within the organisation. It gives me great pleasure to introduce David Gillick. David's probably well known to a lot of you from, and he might turn his camera on, David, while we're here. He's well known. David's one of Ireland's most successful sprint athletes, and apart from that, he is a TU Dublin graduate. So even more importantly, he stepped off the track in 2013 after a very successful athletics career, which included winning Ireland's first sprint gold medal in 76 years and winning the European Indoor 400-meter Championships in 2005. He went on to retain his title in 2009 and became an Olympian in 2008. A significant goal for David was to compete in a global 400-meter final, which an Irish athlete had never achieved. In 2009, he finished sixth in the Berlin World Championships, competing and beating some of the top 400-meter athletes. He holds the Irish outdoor and indoor 400-meter records at 44.77 and 45.52 seconds. A few seconds quicker than me, David. Since leaving the track, David you might have seen him on Celebrity MasterChef, and which he won, and he has written one cookbook, and then his second book is called Back on Track. It's a 4-part plan to a healthy lifestyle. And David now works in the whole, in the wellness and well-being sector. He'll talk to you a little bit about his work there. Today's session, I think, will be really, really interesting for everybody. David's been so open and and so honest about his journeys and the trials and tribulations of his life as an athlete, and then finding a new identity post his identity as a well-known athlete. So he'll talk about the highs and lows of sporting career and the sudden change and uncertainty through retirement. And I've spoken to David extensively about this myself. He's going to create awareness about the impact of change and uncertainty, which is so pertinent at this point in time for ourselves and our students, and how you deal with changes and uncertainty, the role of stress, anxiety, and worry. He talk about understanding stress and how it impacts the body, good stress, bad stress, and the various types of stress from normal to acute to chronic. I focus on resilience. What does resilience mean? Why do we need to build resilience? And again, it's a word that's thrown around so much within the education circle, and we've heard it today with some of our speakers. So it's really important for us to how do we support students in terms of building resilience. So that question of, are you born with resilience or can you build it? So he'll talk about the whole, managing an event and the response and the outcomes, and a whole holistic approach to mindset, rest, nutrition, self-development strategies and tips around action, purpose, truth, and actions. A lot to cover in a fairly short space of time, David, so no pressure. So I'll leave the floor to you. And again, as we said, if any problems sharing the screen, just give me the nod, and then I'll get one of my colleagues to have a look at the questions and answers. Just to remind you all, please post the questions in the questions and answers piece, and we can upvote them. David will speak for about 30 minutes, and we hope we'll have 15 minutes of his time to get some deeper insight into, ask him a few questions on some of the areas that he's raised. Thanks, David.
Cheers, Dave. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all keeping well, and thanks for the opportunity to I suppose, listen to me for the next maybe half an hour and a bit of my journey. As Dave mentioned, he gave a real rundown of what I'm going to cover, so there's an awful lot in there. But I think, the key thing for me with this half an hour that I have for you is use it as an opportunity to check in with yourself, reflect on your own journey over the last 15 months, because I am aware you deal with an awful lot of people, an awful lot of students, and I'm sure over the last 15 months, there's been a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, and an awful lot of uncertainty that has probably come your way. But then obviously you're dealing with that yourself on a personal level and a professional level. So, I always kind of say to people, use this as an opportunity maybe to check in with yourselves. As Dave mentioned, I will kind of touch on stress, resilience, and a lot of it is from my own perspective of my own journey and how I've dealt with an awful lot of change. And again, open and honest, any questions, please fire them into the chat box, and I'll do my best to answer them all. So don't be shy. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen. So just bear with me 1 second, and it's up and running. And you can excuse the pun on up and running, but hopefully everyone can see that. If you can't, maybe Dave can kind of say so, but I'll take it. Yeah, all good. Okay. So I kind of titled this Running Through Uncertainty for the obvious reasons of what has gone on over the last 15 months. Dave did mention my background. I studied in TU Dublin, as it is known now. I went on to do a master's over in Loughborough University in the UK, mainly to follow my dream of becoming an athlete and a full-time athlete. Life has been, I suppose, full of ups and downs, both on the track and off the track. He mentioned Celebrity MasterChef, which I did 8 years ago, and I make no excuses. I continue to milk the backside out of it. I do a bit of work in that space in terms of well-being, both like for a couple of brands, but then also corporately as well. I myself and a couple of other people in that space have a company called Remote Wellbeing, and it's kind of been born out of the last year, and we do a lot of work in that space in the corporates, and obviously with all the change that's gone on. So, you know, I suppose when I look back at my career, it's opened up an awful lot of opportunities for me. And one of the key things I really struggled with was my identity, because for so long I was defined as an athlete. And just even to create that picture, this was my event, okay, 400 meters. And there might be people in the audience that have ran a 400, might be people in the audience that know nothing about it. But we all watch athletics on the TV at the Olympic Games. And that track is one lap, it's 400 meters. And that was my everything. And just to break it all down for you, on the screen now, this is kind of the way it all pans out. You get out of those blocks on the start line and everything kind of feels okay. You just get out hard. And then you're thinking, you know what, it's only a 200. I'm feeling good as you head down the back straight. You turn that bend and you can begin to see the finish line. You can smell that finish line and you're feeling good at 300. And then suddenly it all falls apart. The last 50 is like hell. And the 400 is a very tough event. An awful lot of stuff goes into that. And for my career, it was absolutely everything. And I loved it. I absolutely loved my career, the ability to do what I was doing, to run fast and travel the world and go to championships and win a couple of medals. And Dave mentioned the first medal was when I was actually in Angel Street. I won the European Indoor Championships over 400 meters. And at the time, this was back in 2005, it was Ireland's first gold medal in a sprint event in, I think it was 76 years. So it was a huge achievement for me, but also for sprinting in Ireland, because we were better known as a long distance nation. Sonia Sullivan, Katrina McKiernan, and all these people. And I'll never forget the experience, because I came home on a Monday and I had lectures on the Tuesday. And I remember hopping on the Lewis. I live out in Dundrum, Ballantyre area. So I hopped on the Lewis and it was packed, and they used to hand out a free Metro paper. And I can remember being on this packed Lewis heading in for a 9 o'clock lecture. And there was a guy next to me, start reading the paper. He looks down, he looks back up, he looks back down, and it was me. My fat head was on the back pages. And I always remember that, because straight away I felt very uncomfortable. I felt suddenly there was recognition, and with recognition came an element of pressure, expectation. Suddenly people had an interest in what I was doing and what was next. When is my next championships? When is my next race? Am I going to beat the Americans and win Olympic gold medals? And all of this just changed in one weekend. And again, in college, I can remember people suddenly looking at me a little bit differently. I remember one lecturer called it out. I gave me a standing ovation in the classroom, and I felt extremely embarrassed. But all of it was new. And to be honest, and the truth be told, I didn't know how to deal with that. And I struggled with that to a point where I can remember one day I was at home and I want to go down and get a breakfast roll in the shop down the end of the road. And in the area, you know, it's a close-knit community. I'm one of 4 kids in my family, so yeah, we're a big family, I suppose. And you know, you're bound to bump into someone. And again, I didn't want the questions, so I didn't go down and get that breakfast roll. I said I'm going to stay in the house, for the fear that I'd bump into someone and have to explain what was happening. And like I was saying, that was all brand new, and I think that was my first taste of change, first experience of actually that element of recognition, that kind of pressure, and obviously having a kind of a label on me. And it was something that I felt a little bit uncomfortable with. But you just crack on. You know, I was a male. I didn't really want to talk about it. I didn't know how to deal with it. So I just said I'd do nothing with it. And I just cracked on. The following year, 2006, came around and had the European Outdoor Championships. So you've indoors here, you've outdoors here. It was a step above. I improved that summer. I was running a little bit quicker. And I think my hopes and expectations were that I'd make a final in Gothenburg in the European Outdoor Championships. Went over to Gothenburg and got into the semi-final, and I came last. I didn't even make a final. I came last in the semi-final, paddy last, and I crossed the line and I was devastated. I felt embarrassed. I felt I let an awful lot of people down. And I just didn't deal with the emotions of it all. I had to walk through the mix zone where all the print, the TV, all the media are, and all the questions. What happened? You know, you're one of Europeans last year, you've come here and you haven't even made a final. And I struggled with that. I wanted to blame everybody else. I wanted to blame the track, the weather, the blocks. But deep down, I knew what happened. I didn't deal with the emotions of it all. I didn't deal with all the change that I had. The nerves, the anxiety, the pressure, the expectations. I simply thought, you know what, I'll get into those blocks, on your marks, get set, bang, the gun will go and everything will work out okay. And it didn't. And that was my first experience of, I suppose, you know, everything just going pear-shaped and not been able to deal with it all and not sure where to go to ask for help or advice. And the first thing I did, and it was a huge learning curve. It was probably the biggest school day I had. I debriefed, and it was the first time I'd ever sat down with a pen and paper and literally just said, okay, what happened? What am I doing? Where do I want to go? Those simple questions. And I always say, like, the greatest tools you'll have are a pen and paper. And it was the first moment I reflected on the journey that I had over the last 12 months. And it forced me to make some key decisions on where I was going next. One of those was, am I enjoying this? Is this something that I want to pursue? And the answer was 100%. So I started looking at, okay, well, what can I do? Where can I go? And I'd finished my degree that year in 2006. So I decided I was going to relocate over to Loughborough University in the UK. Why? Because I wanted to put myself in an environment where I was around like-minded athletes, medal winners, people who had excelled at a really high level. And I think someone had said, look, David, if you want to be world class, you got to surround yourself with world class. And that was exactly it. So I relocated over to Loughborough. The main reason was I wanted to run. That was a hotbed of athletics, of the high performance centre over there for British athletes. And I then studied on the side of that. I did a master's in sports management. But the main reason was I wanted to run, and I wanted to run fast. And I put myself in that environment and I absolutely loved it. It was an ecosystem. I began feeding off all these people, and it gave me such confidence, such belief within myself. And I think, again, I had initial results straight off the back. I felt very comfortable. I was training really well. My times improved, and I retained my European title in Birmingham 2007. So by this stage, I had 2 European indoors. I wanted more. And Dave mentioned at the top there, I wanted to be in the world's top 8. And that was a huge task. And I can remember thinking about it and going, I can't do that. Like, I'm from Dublin, Ireland. I'm not that fast. No one from Ireland's ever ran that quick. And what you're looking at here was my plan. It was literally my mind map. And I know there's probably people in the audience would know an awful lot of things about goal setting, putting a plan in place and doing mind maps. I had never really done it before. And I remember just sitting down one day kind of going, okay, well, I want to be in the world's top 8. And just underneath that bubble commitment, you'll see a number of 44.80. That became the big goal. That became the time, my KPI. Everything revolved around 44.8. Why? Because on average, that was a time required for an athlete to make a global final, so top 8 in the world. And then I just began building everything around that. And it was basically kind of, okay, 44.8, can't do that. No way. And what I kind of did was I began to challenge myself. Well, okay, well, what are the little things I can control? What are the simple things that I can do on a day-to-day basis? And I began putting them in place. So that little pyramid in the middle, that became the blueprint. That became, you know, my kind of my route to that success. And at the very bottom was people. And this is the thing, I think sometimes as we are, again, in an Olympic year, we'll watch All Going Well Tokyo this summer, and what we'll see is people running, jumping, throwing, walking. But what we don't see is the team of people behind that individual. And that was hugely important to me, because when I went to Loughborough, one of the first days training, I can remember walking out of the high pack, as it was known, and I looked through a glass window and I saw my training partner, my new training partner, and my new coach. And they were sitting at a table with about 3 other people. And I remember thinking, I wonder what they're doing. And then afterwards, I found out that those other 3 people, one was a physio, one was a strength and conditioning coach, and one was a doctor, I can't remember. But what they were doing was they were collaborating. They were sitting around a table and discussing, talking, sharing how they were going to get my new trainer to realize his potential. And I can remember going home that day thinking, well, where's my team? Who are the people? Who are the people I can rely on? Who are the people I can ask for help and advice? And that's exactly what I did. I began to kind of understand that I didn't have all the answers and I needed some key people that were going to help me. And what you're looking at here, those little bubbles, they were my 5 C's, I suppose, when I look back at my own career. And even for yourselves right now, because a lot of those 5 C's have been impacted. You were all working in remote situations. Maybe that collaboration is a little bit harder than what it was. Maybe communication's impacted. You're missing, having that coffee break or that lunch with your colleagues. That kind of, what are you up to for the weekend? Just that human side of it. And that's where I think the courage and commitment can really come to the fore. That we've got to push on through this, and even your own kind of courage to help other people, because that's essentially what you all do. People come to you for help and advice, and that's a lot to take on with all the uncertainty that's gone on over the last 15 months. And then I'm sure on a personal level you have your own anxieties about what is going to happen and where the next 6 months or a year, how that's going to unfold. And I think sometimes just having that little reflection, sometimes maybe having your own little mind map and reevaluating your own little goals or the things that you want to do for yourselves. And behind those C's were the little pictures, the things that meant something to me, the things that resonated, the things that motivated me. Because it was hard. When I was training, I'd have maybe, 11 months of the year, you'd 1 month off, 4 weeks, and you could be building for something that was 9 months down the line. And it was hard. It was hard to keep your motivation, your belief, and all of those things very, very buoyant. So I just began to stick these little pictures, things that meant an awful lot to me and things that inspired me. And I think, the truth be told, that it didn't happen overnight. It took me probably about 2 years to get to the top of that little pyramid on your screen. I wrote that in 2007. Thankfully, I got to the top of it. I made the world final in Berlin. I came 6th, and the fastest I've ever ran for 400 meters is inside that 44.80. It's 44.77. So it is amazing what you can achieve with a pen and paper and a lot of help and a bit of belief. And for me, I can now look back with fondness. But again, an awful lot has changed. An awful lot has changed since I came off the athletics track. And I think a lot of the things will resonate with people, because even in your own circumstances over the last year, we've all gone through a lot of change. And again, professionally, personal, family, childcare, your routine, isolation, working from home, all this sort of stuff, having brutal broadband in the house and things not working, it just heightens that stress, that worry, that anxiety. And I think in my experience, when I've really felt a little bit overwhelmed, it's very much, I look to the future. When will things go back to normal? When is it going to happen? Give me that date. And I'd instantly then maybe look back to the past and almost idolize my past. I want things to go back to the way they were. And all of this kind of change and anxiety can impact us on numerous levels. And when I retired 8 years ago, when I was 30, and I'll touch on that in a little bit, but I did go back and I did a qualification in sports psychology. And I can remember sitting in a lecture, and the lecturer put up this model, the KublerRoss Model, and she started talking about grief. And I was thinking, where is this? What's this got to do with sport? And unknown to me, the KublerRoss Model originated as a grief cycle. So when there's bereavement or you lose someone that's very close to you, you go through a set cycle of stages. And again, the research now would suggest that the KublerRoss Model is now transferred into a transition curve, a change curve. And when she put this up, I could see exactly where I was at. And I was very, very much in that frustration, tipping into that depression kind of stage. And slowly but surely, I began to understand why I was in that stage and what had happened, and the shock, the denial, but also that there is a way out. And a lot of the work that I've been doing over the last, say, couple of even weeks and months, I suppose before the restrictions began to ease, there was a lot of people around that depression stage. And I'm not using that word depression saying that everyone is depressed, but it's low mood, it's lacking in energy, it's that motivation just begins to kind of flatline. And that has an impact. And that has an impact on anxiety and stress. And I think it's creating a bit of an awareness around how we're feeling. And at this moment, I'd ask everyone on a scale of 1 to 5. Again, you don't have to share it, but internally, where are you on that scale? 1 being I'm fine. 5, you know what? I'm at capacity. I'm really struggling. I'm stressed. And again, if we can kind of check in with ourselves on a regular basis and understand the impact of maybe all the changes having, how that's impacting stress and how that's impacting you, well, then maybe we can manage that a little bit better. Because if we don't, we then can maybe run into a few kind of problems. And stress is very, very interesting. Like stress for me was something that, to be honest with you, when I was racing, it was about dealing with nerves, dealing with anxiety. And it was only after I retired that I actually began to understand like how it was impacting me on a day-to-day basis. Not being able to sleep, having insomnia, getting up the next day and feeling incredibly tired, worrying that I wasn't performing the way I thought people expected me to perform, coming from a sport where it was always fitter, faster, stronger, coming into the real world where I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. So that kind of anxiety, the frustration of not saying goodbye to my sport on my terms, was very, very frustrating, maybe very angry and almost bitter towards my athletic career. And then the mental side of it, like always having that high level of anxiety, I couldn't focus. I was lacking creativity. I wasn't able to remember things. The simple stuff, I felt scattered. Every day was a firefight. Every week was a firefight. Saturday, I was actually okay on a Saturday. And then Sunday, that depression would come back in because I was fearful of a Monday and the upcoming week. As a result of that, it affected me on a spiritual level. And sometimes when I talk about spiritual, people think religion. No, it's that connection with yourself, your own ingrained spirit. And I think as a result of the stress, the anxiety, I questioned everything. I questioned my role in this world. I questioned who I was. I questioned my purpose in life. Because I think coming from the world of sport, and even post-college, when I had a routine, I had a structure, I had exams, I had things I was aiming for, I then went into the world of athletics where, again, I was tested every single day, I had a routine, I had a purpose, I was always building towards something. And then suddenly it was all gone. Now I didn't have a routine. Now I didn't have a goal. And I think, again, for a lot of people right now, you might be able to relate to that because I'm sure there's people, even in the audience today, had things that you were working towards. Maybe it was a holiday. Maybe it was a new house, a new car. Maybe there was something there that was really personal to you, and it's gone. And that can impact us. That can make us feel a bit like it can impact our motivation, our desires, and all these sort of emotions. And if we're not used to that, it can spiral out of control. And I've actually had conversations with people that say, oh, no, I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed. I'm dealing with everything okay. And I say, can you sleep at night? And then they go, do you know what? I find it really hard to switch off at night. I get into bed and that's when the mind just goes into overdrive. I'm thinking about things and I can't control that and it's impacting my sleep. And in terms of even mental health, the first thing that can be impacted is sleep. It's rest recovery. It's also things like how we fuel ourselves. So the food side of it comes in. And again, this is all just how it impacts us. And I think when we check in with ourselves and we can acknowledge how we feel in certain areas, well, then, you know what, we can maybe manage that a little bit better. My own kind of mental health, and I'll be honest with you, it got terribly bad. And it all came with all that change. I retired when I was 30. I had a couple of injuries post, I suppose 2009, a great year, 2010, a good year. And then things began to kind of break down. I had a few injuries in 2011. I missed the London Olympics through injury. I said I'd give it another go. I was now down in Australia around this time of the year, actually preparing for a race in Japan. And it's always the way. I did one of my best sessions And on the last repetition of that session, I tore my Achilles. And I can remember thinking, right, you know what? I'm now 30. I haven't competed in about 3 seasons. I'm losing money. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I said, right, you know what? Okay, it's time to hang up the spikes. It's time to move on. And I did that thinking, yeah, you know, I'll just move on. It'll be easy. And everyone's like, oh, you got the world at your feet. But the biggest thing that I didn't do is I didn't talk. I didn't ask for help and advice. I wasn't honest with people when they said, how are you? How are you doing? I'd put the mask on and I'd be like, yeah, I'm great. I'm fine. Yeah, looking forward to the next couple of years. Yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And internally, I had no clue. I didn't debrief. I literally just hopped on a plane, came home. I did Celebrity MasterChef because I filled the void. I won that. And then next minute, my face was on the side of Dublin bus. I was promoting this, that, and the other. And sure, how could I turn around and say that things weren't good? I felt guilty if I was to turn around and say, "Oh yeah, I'm struggling," because people are like, "What? You know, you're doing great. Everything's fantastic for you." And I suffered in silence, and I kept it all in house. The stress level was just through the roof. I couldn't sleep. I had insomnia. Food became a huge crutch for me. Again, someone who was very into food and living that whole kind of healthy lifestyle. All I wanted to do was pig out on donuts and poor quality food. And I panicked. I took a job that came my way working for a sports brand. I thought, yeah, I'm into sport. I got fixated on money. I thought it was all about money. If I had more money, I'd be happy and I'd be content. So I took that job and I was working remotely. I was driving the length and breadth of this country, spending an awful lot of time by myself. And the reality was I'd go out, say the N7, heading down the country. I'd pull in for diesel and I'd come out with 6 donuts. And I'm not lying because they were sold in a 6-pack. And I'd eat all those 6 donuts, one after another, literally in 20 minutes. And that was it. That was my hit, if you like. On a Tuesday, Domino's Pizza used to do 2 large pizzas for the price of 1. 2 large pizzas. I'd be straight on the phone, 2 of them and a tub of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. And I would do the dog on it. And that became the crutch. I stopped exercising. I stopped kind of become, I suppose, that awareness of how I was feeling. No, I didn't even check in with myself. It was just go, 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 go. And it had a huge impact on my mental health. I wasn't talking. I didn't talk to anyone. I would distance myself from any occasions or anything like that. And it just spiraled kind of out of control, to be honest. The panic attack set in. And look, I know this might be hard for people, but that's mental health. And if I'm not talking about it, well, I'm not really doing my job. I'm not removing that stigma that still is around mental health. And, you know, I firmly believe that there is people who have struggled over the last 15 months. I also believe that there's people right now that are very anxious and very worried about the changes that are now going to come. You know, a lot of people maybe got into a good routine, but now we have to change. We may have to change that again in the coming 6 months and a year. So again, there's a lot of uncertainty and there's an awful lot of anxiety for you as an individual and also the people that you work with, the students. So again, they're coming to you. You may not have the answers. And that could leave you with a bit of anxiety and impact you. So again, it's becoming a little bit more aware of how we deal with this. And if we can spot the little triggers, well, then we can do something about it. And these were some of my own kind of warning signs when I do look back, like, you know, angry, sad, high emotions, low emotions, very fearful about what people thought of me. And then also what about the future, what's going to happen, that social withdrawal, not going out with friends, not mingling with people, no family occasions, because I didn't want to converse. I didn't have the answers, so I didn't want the questions. Eating habits, sleeping habits, and then that inability to just do daily tasks, like getting out of bed, going to bed, you know, eating. No, I'm not hungry. I'm not hungry because that anxiety was suppressing my hunger. So I'm not fueling myself correctly. It's having an impact about how I feel about myself, my self-esteem, confidence, all of these emotions, and that huge element of not knowing what I was good at. And I think sometimes we can define and label people very, very quickly. And I was an athlete. I was only good at running around 400 meters, and that was it. And that's what I believed. So it took me an awful lot of time to kind of deal with that. Thankfully, I got out the other side, again, through an awful lot of help. And it all came to a head on a Sunday because I dreaded Mondays. And on this particular day, it would have been late 2015. And I suppose it was step one in building resilience. And resilience used to frustrate me. I always thought, why am I resilient? Why is that person over there more resilient than me? They must be just born. Where do you get resilience? Can you buy it? Can you take it as a pill? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And then berate myself as, I suppose, the reason as to why I wasn't resilient. And what happened was I'd gone to counselling a few times before, but I just didn't connect with the individual, and I never really felt that I was getting anything out of it, so I just stopped going. And then on one particular Sunday, my wife Charlotte was actually pregnant on her first child, Oscar, and heavily pregnant, and she got upset, and that's when I kind of realized I need to do something here. I need a bit of help. And I rang a friend of mine, went down to him, we had a conversation. And the key thing about that conversation was we went for a walk. I know it sounds ridiculous, it sounds very, very easy, but I felt an awful lot more comfortable in that environment where we were going for a walk. We went for a walk around Marley Park, and he's not a bad looking fella, but I didn't have to look at him, right? I was shoulder to shoulder. And that made me feel a little bit at ease. And when he asked the question, so, why did you get in touch? Well, what's up? That was it. It all came out. The mask came off. Day one, I was open and honest. And, then he told me about his journey, because he'd gone through sport and he came out the other side after dealing with retirement and all that. And I'm not making this up. And I'm not saying it for a laugh either, but I remember thinking, geez, I thought I was bad. This guy's on another level. But straight away, I wasn't the only one. He went through it. I'm going through it. I wasn't the only person, because for so long I thought I was the only one. Nobody would be able to understand, so I just kept it all in-house. So the long and short of it was that really kind of helped me. He gave me a bit of direction on who to go and talk to. I did that. I began to learn a little bit about my own journey, why I was feeling a certain way. And then it was like a case of, right, well, now I can actually develop a few little tips and tricks to kind of manage myself and manage how I feel. And it was all to do with that kind of like awareness piece and becoming a little bit more understanding of the little triggers and spotting those little triggers. And one of them was around this kind of whole E plus R equals O, event plus response equals outcome. And I'm not going to say I'm the finished article and all this, but it all came to a head there, like lockdown number one, working from home, my wife working from home. At this stage, we had 2 kids. We now have 3 kids. I don't know what happened. Don't ask me. But we're all working from home. Everything in my world has been cancelled, postponed. Yeah, I was tested. My resilience was tested. And I took a call one day out in the hall of the house. Things were being cancelled. You're a little bit annoyed, frustrated. How am I going to pay the bills? How long is it going to go on for? I walked back into the kitchen area, and Oscar, who was now 5, was playing with his little Duplo blocks. And I'm talking about the chunky little things. I'm working from home. I'm not properly dressed. I've no footwear on. I walk in. I step on the corner of one of those Duplo. And what do? I give out to him for playing with his Duplo. And then my wife gives out to me, I give out to her, and the whole outcome is just negative. And it's something that I remember, E plus R equals O. It's that response. It's that dart. And Dr. Rick Hansen is a neuropsychologist over in the States, and he wrote a book called The Buddha's Brain. And he talks about E plus R equals O as a game of darts. The first dart is out of your control. It's going to inflict pain. It's going to make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, but it's out of your control. There's nothing you can do about it. Darts number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, etc., are all within your grasp. They're in your control. And the example that I used, I walked into that room and I just start throwing darts at everybody else, and the outcome is negative. And it's something that just makes me kind of just stop, just think about our response to everything that's gone on. There's things that we can influence, things that are outside of our control, but we need to adapt to it. And that's all about how we respond. And I think if we can just take that split second at times, well, then the outcome could be a little bit better. So again, it's how we react to this. But overall, it's coming back to these kind of resilience strategies. And resilience for me is it's about bounce back ability. It's about learning from the trials and tribulations that life has thrown at you. And even at this moment, I would say, like, to people, think back to a really difficult time in your life, be it professionally, personally. And it can be very uncomfortable to think about it, but think about how you got through it. as much as it was very difficult, you came through the other side. But how did you do that? Did you put your hand up and ask for help with advice? Did you do it alone? Because there's strategies within that, and that's resilience in action. So how do you build and foster resilience? It's looking back at how you overcame life's obstacles and setbacks. And I think resilience is, I said about bounce back ability, but it's about learning, adapting, and growing from stress. And that's how closely they're linked. So again, if we can become a little bit more of how stress impacts us and how we can manage it, well, therefore, you're automatically going to become a little bit more resilient. And, reminding yourself and looking back and putting little strategies in place of how you can negotiate your day to day or your week to week. And some of them on the screen are exactly what I implement. Sleep and recovery, trying to, I've 3 kids in the house now, 5, nearly 3 and 2 months. And it's like the routine, they're all about routine. And if they're in a routine, they're a little bit happier. But as adults, maybe we go the opposite direction. We eat late, we stay up late, we are on technology, we do everything maybe a little bit backwards. So for me, in terms of my own mental health, it's sleep and it's recovery. They're 2 different things. Recovery over the course of the day. Am I getting my little 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Am I having lunch at a table? Am I arranging meetings like back to back, or am I giving myself that 15, 10 minutes in between? Simple little things. That's recovery. Could be reading a book, going for a run or a walk, whatever. Again, the healthy food, exercise, bringing in that holistic approach to it, planning, prioritizing. And that was something I really struggled with, because I had a coach for 10 years. He gave me my plan. I knew exactly what I was doing, and it was on the plan, and that was it. Whereas now in the real world, I have to do that, and I struggled with that. My time management, working for myself, what's priority, working from home. If I don't do what I meant to do, and then I'm trying to be with the kids, it's kind of like, I need to get back to that person or that email. I'm not mentally present with the people that matter most. So again, it's kind of just bringing in that kind of thought process of how we all structure our day and how we manage our time. And the 3D technique, the little voice inside my head was very persistent, very annoying. And the 3D technique is cognitive behavioral therapy, where it's these distraction, distance, and dispute. So distraction is, if you're aware that, God, I'm talking to myself very negatively, do something about it. Break it up a little bit. Get away, go out, music, window open, something that breaks that cycle. Then you distance yourself from that voice. Because if you don't distance yourself from that voice, it's your own voice. And you'll let that voice just go on and on and on. So I'll be honest with you, the dude inside my head is called Chopper Read. If anyone is Australian, Chopper Read is an Australian criminal. He's a lunatic. It's Chopper talking. And then I can dispute it. Chopper, shut up. You're talking a load of BS. That's not going to happen. That never happened, etc., etc. So I'll dispute it. But again, it's becoming a little bit aware of how you talk to yourself, because that is so powerful in terms of your beliefs, your actions, and your behaviors. And then finally, looking at the other 2 boxes there, success, remind yourself of all your past successes. Again, maybe in Ireland, we're a bit shy to pat ourselves on the back. I can imagine the amount of students that you guys have helped in terms of your own career, giving guidance to, giving them a sense of direction, telling them that they're good at something. That's very, very uplifting and rewarding and empowering for you. And I think sometimes reminding yourselves of your success, remind yourselves of the journey that you as an individual have been on, and patting yourself on the back and saying, you know what, I'm kind of good at what I do. That's really, really helpful. It's really, really important to build that resilience off the back of that. And again, it's something that I do now. I'm not saying that you walk into the house and there's a shrine to David, but there's a couple of pictures and medals and things that I've won that I'm proud of. There was a time where you wouldn't see them. And then finally, advice, mentor, and support. I'm not afraid to put my hand up now. I'm not afraid to ask for help and advice. And it's something that's very, very important. And I don't shy away from it. I see the value in it. And even I know Dave is on the call and introduced me, but like Dave in itself, he's helped me out an awful lot. And I suppose from my perspective, it took a bit of courage to go and meet him for a coffee and say, yeah, I'm kind of struggling with this and struggling with that, for the fear that I might come across sounding a little bit weak. So again, I think that's very, very important. And, the power of a conversation is huge. And I think if we can create a little bit of understanding about how we manage ourselves and how we impact, or how the impact of stress and all the change that's going on, we can come out the other side a lot better. So I'm just going to finish up. I just have one more slide that I'd like to share with you. It's just in and around this kind of managing yourself. And I'm aware there's a lot going on over the last 2 days about maybe your career and managing other people, but don't forget about yourself. Self-care is very, very important. And, get out, get time for yourself, use the apps that are available, give purpose to your day. Don't be afraid to switch on and don't be afraid to switch off. And then finally communicate. I think it's communicate with yourself, but communicate with other people. Again, it's challenging for a lot of people. Maybe their only social engagement was in the workplace. And they're working from home and working remotely, maybe they're not getting that. So don't underestimate the power of a phone call, a text message, or something like that. Okay. Just conscious of time there, Dave. So I'm going to throw it back to you.
Brilliant, thank you, David. You've taken us on the 400-meter journey of your life, and with I suppose you weren't a hurdle jumper. You've jumped plenty of hurdles along the way. So really, thank you for that. It's very inspiring. And one thing that really struck me was the word that you used about the vulnerability. And we had one of our colleagues talk yesterday about leadership, and he talked about that ability to be vulnerable. And I think you've really shown us that in spades today, and that searing honesty, I think, has been very refreshing. And there's a lot of social good, not just for us here, but I know you've done so much social good outside to the public realm as well. Just one or two questions coming in here, and some great compliments to your presentation. What advice would you give to us with regards to supporting students to manage change and uncertainty?
Yeah, look, it's a great question, and I think sometimes a kind of a human conversation, and giving them the opportunity maybe to share how they're feeling, and obviously listen. And I know there'd be great people on this call that are well able to listen, but it's almost kind of one thing that I used to do, and this may kind of help people that come knocking on the door, is that wall of belief. What makes you you? What are your superpowers? So for example, like, what's David Gillett good at? And almost getting them to write that down. What's your vision and your mission? And this was something that I really struggled with, because I didn't even know the difference. And we talk about vision and mission, but I think sometimes it's important for people to like have a look at what they would like to be and where they would like to go. And it's almost going back to as a kid, like we tell kids like to dream big, dream big. And then sometimes as we mature, we tell ourselves that we can't do that. And sometimes I think it's great to go back to that kind of a blank canvas and almost just, let people and maybe facilitate them writing down their skills, their expertise, what they think they're good at, and almost then coming in and helping them go, well, actually, did you ever think of doing this? And did you ever think of doing that? And your opportunities. So again, that kind of wall of belief, I think, is a good kind of area, that something that can really help me.
Great, thank you. One comment here that's been kind of upvoted a bit is the role of self-talk, and we all know that it's so important within athletics. And I remember listening to interviews with Sonia Sullivan as well, and that fail better piece, and her mindset wasn't quite as strong as it should have been on the day, and the negative self-talk. You spoke a little bit about that. Time is tight, but what would you, in terms of self-talk, what would you distill? What would be the key essence of good self-talk?
Well, good self-talk, very much kind of on a positive. Like, I'm not trying to say that, when we have a negative thought, push it away. It's accepting that it's there. It's accepting that you're going to have times where we are going to talk to ourselves negatively, but it's catching that. It's almost becoming aware, God, that's a bit of a negative thought, and then reshaping it and reframing it. And even on a practical level, if you find yourself talking to yourself very negative, or you're getting down, write it down. Write it on a piece of paper. And we talk about kind of from performance level. And one of the things that I started doing in my career, I'd write them down. I'd write down all the negative thoughts and even that voice inside my head. And I'd rip it up and I'd chuck it in the bin. And then I'd write down all the positives. And the difference is, one's facts, one's the things that actually happened. And then the other one's all these irrational thoughts. And it's amazing. You'd write them down and start like reading back over them and almost laughing at yourself, going, why am I even thinking that? But it's almost catching it, managing it, and then looking at the positives. And that's where I think for me that would have worked pretty well.
Brilliant. Just one or two very quick ones, maybe 45 seconds. Can you tell us a little bit more about, in 10 seconds, your planning and prioritization strategies?
Yeah, like again, it's kind of like I try and do it on maybe a Sunday or a Friday for the following week. And it's like, okay, what do I need to do? And then putting a P1, a P2 and a P3. Because if I don't do that, it becomes a bit scattered. I'm trying to do everything, but I've got to look at what's the high value stuff. And I try and do it in the morning on, like, if the big things, do it in the morning earlier in the week to give yourself a bit of momentum. And then I block the day into 2-hour blocks. So 2 hours solid deep work, and then maybe a bit of a break, and then come back again. So, you know, trying to prioritize the week where you've got your low days and you got your heavy days.
Brilliant. Listen, we'll have to wrap it there and get the countdown timer is finished. Somebody telling me to shut up. So it's been a